We are opening up with a visionary practice that says what your name is, where you're located, and describing your excitement about being on this planet at this time with your particular gifts in the world and that you walk with. And then what color does that look like?
And people of color are going to have to um, switch gears, I think. I am grateful to be an 80-year-old woman who still has this much opportunity to be engaged in the conversation about justice and about change and wellness and healing. That's the work I've been doing for the last 50 years. And I'm a retired professor and I love teaching. That's my way of being in the world. That I like to help people give birth to parts of themselves that they didn't know they had to give birth to. My institute is called Turquoise and Lavender, and it's called Turquoise and Lavender because of the healing properties of lavender. So I see myself as a person who is a conduit for light and healing. Old woman, which is called a crone archetypally, and I am so honored to have had the opportunity to live long enough to wear that designation.
Education is the key to getting you through all of it. So anyway, on that piece, I'll move on from there. But yeah, this education and this disenfranchisement is definitely something that will continue to keep us broken apart. And until we are able to really address these aspects and start from the babies, it's just going to be something we're just going to be talking about forever.
First of all, it's good to see you, Dr. Warfield.
Thank you from my heart, and from all my elders and Visionary Council that made it possible. Amen.
Yes, yes, that is so
I
huge.
miss you, miss home, miss touching base with home, but hey,
Well, yeah, I'm holding it down.
time will come.
You can come back and visit. A lot has changed. A lot has changed in Kalamazoo, but it's all good. I think the spirit of Kalamazoo is something pretty special. It still resonates a little progressive, but also you got that other element too. It's just this place is it's a unique space on the planet. It really is. I look forward to the mentoring opportunities that might present themselves informally, and maintain those that I've created over the years as a teacher. But I'm tired. And I recognize what we're going through now is a huge psyop. That's how I see it. And when I step back emotionally from the fear mongering and the hate mongering, I mean, there's never been a soap opera this damn good, but it really plays out that way to me. So I don't have any fear. I do believe that there are serious repercussions for Black and Brown people because of it. I think we have to be vigilant and diligent. We have to protect ourselves mentally more than anything because most of what is happening, we're saying to ourselves. Most of what's going on is how we take in what people are doing. But when we recognize our own sovereignty and our own integrity, and there's always peace to be found, however you find it. I'm not going to sit up here and tell people how they should find that peace. But I do believe it's always there. And so I'm spending my time trying to figure out how to tap into that in my waking state, in my sleep state, whatever that looks like, that's where I'm trying to be. Because I think that's where real change happens when you tap into a more spiritual sense of who you are and not get swept up in the drama. It doesn't mean you don't have to protest. It doesn't mean you don't speak out. I think there's a time and a place for all of that. But I think when we change people's sense of their reality and their power in that reality, I find that to be more lasting for myself in terms of how I sustain my own sense of well-being in this environment that we find ourselves. So thank you for allowing me to be on here with like-minded people and have a chance to see you and to meet new folks. That's what I'm about.
So again, my name is Cookie Rutledge, and as I told you, I'm in Fort Wayne, Indiana, which is a blood red state. I always say I live in a blood red city in a blood red state, which presents its challenges, but I'm up to it. As a believer, as a Christian believer, I'm really up to it. I keeps me at work with the young people. I believe that that's where that's where so much promise is. And so I spend my time helping young people navigate the college admissions process and helping them get into college, which has become more challenging during this administration than it has at any other part. But it makes me more creative. And I'm really very hopeful about the things that I see and the young people with whom I deal. So for me, the promise of them is everything to me.
I'm Allison Hammond, and I'm here actually in Portage. I lived in Kalamazoo for most of the last years and moved to Portage. So, um, just really quick, I'm so thrilled to be here because Deborah takes me places and invites me to things where I always learn something and grow from it, and find myself getting into action and all of that. And I need to say that I met her because Sharon Lockett was actually my son's principal, but became a dear friend of my husband and mine. And then I met Deborah and she worked with me. And so, yeah, and then I'm also doing a book club this summer with Jackie Mitchell. So just very important family in my life. I think what I'm excited about is, so here in Kalamazoo, we are starting to model a initiative that's actually in Lansing, Michigan, called the Justice League of Greater Lansing, which is a faith-based reparations initiative. And I won't get into all of the details, but what I want to say that excites me about it is when I've had to really learn about my own church's history, my own personal history, my ancestry, and how many white people will say, well, my family didn't own slaves. No, but they were poor white people in the South that were given property during the Homestead Act, and they were taught that at least they weren't Black. So I've had to learn those things. And the cool thing is that when you're talking about money and reparations, which basically means it's not that they're coming for our money, it's their money that they didn't get. And so what I want to say is I'm excited about the conversations that I'm having with people it's particularly the Black community, tense sometimes conversations, really heartfelt conversations, getting to hear and really now understanding the underlying dismay of what's going on now has been, while I don't enjoy that, it's very uncomfortable for me as a middle-class white woman. It's also very enlightening. And I feel like I'm in a place where my whole life I've wondered what's going on based on partly my parents have been involved in various initiatives through my whole life. But so I'm excited that I feel like I'm having really honest conversations and going beyond. I mean, I think healing circles and those kinds of things are extremely important. But at the end of the day, there's policies and procedures and literal things that are limiting people that we don't seem to talk about. It's like, let's all be nice to each other. No, my friend who is not able to get a mortgage right now, and I know now I really understand why. So, I want to say one other thing I'm excited about. So my son works for a company called Lyrical Lemonade in Chicago, and they do rap and hip hop videos. He's a graphic designer. And for the last several summers, I've gone to the Summer Smash in Chicago, and it's 16 to 30 age group. What makes me have faith is the youth, as has been said, because at these concerts, there's 3 stages, 30,000 kids. There's kids of every color, what they're wearing, identity. You got cowboy boots to girls wearing barely anything. But these kids they are there enjoying the music and they're all together. And that gives me a lot of hope for the future.
So thank you. And why I do all that visionary stuff? Because I want to live in the authentic now more than ever. And I want to live in the beyond the facades and the persona and all of everything that we've been conditioned to do that has really nothing to do with depth and everything to do with just acting, not necessarily activating. And so that's part of the visionary practitioner piece but it's also regenerative, because regenerative means you're just taking something that was old and you're looking at what to hold on to. You're looking at what needs to be that what's in the future that we're forecasting about, but then you're bringing it into the current in a way that rearranges things differently. And that's the call that was upon Dr. Meeks' heart when she said to me, in fact, I'm gonna have her tell her story of what she did back in her day with changing the energy for young kids that were struggling. Can you just tell us a little bit about that history, Dr. Meeks?
I lived in Macon, Georgia, where I was professor of African American studies, and I ran a community center in a public housing facility, and we had Saturday school for the children because we knew they weren't getting everything they needed at school. For instance, some of our kids had never been to a bookstore and never been to a public library. So we did things like one of the things we did was something we called Operation Book Sack. And we had college students who volunteered to work with the kids and master builders to help the kids build bookshelves for themselves. And then we got Barnes and Noble to give them new books to fill their they created their own little home libraries. And then we had them also write a book, their own book, and on as a part of their Saturday school activity. These were all elementary school children who went to a public elementary school that was on 100% free lunch. So that tells you something about their economic status. And these kids we created a library also. The place was called Aunt Maggie's Kitchen Table. And we created a library within the facility. And the little girl, a little girl that I will never forget, like she looked like she was in kindergarten, but she was actually in elementary school, came up to me one day at the center with a book in her hand, asking me if she could copy some pages, and I just gave her the book. And I have never seen a smile like that on somebody's face from being offered a book, So we decided to put a big basket full of books that the children could just take when they wanted them. When they found a book they liked, they could keep it. Just you think about exposure. I mean, so much of what's wrong with our poor children and children of color is a lack of exposure, that you just don't have anybody giving you an opportunity to know stuff that folks do know if they're not having economic problems and whatever. Our parents were busy just trying to make it to work and make it to the second job and then make it home. And when you get home, you got kids with homework to do, and it's 8 o'clock at night. And so we were very aware of that as an entity within that community. Those children, they had a photography club. They made photographs and they created their own little book of photographs, and we had to put all their photographs up at exhibit at the Douglas Theater and had an opening night for them with their book of photographs, because these are the things that help you to have a better sense about yourself, even though you know how to read and write and you can think, but just having these extra things like that are things that most poor kids don't have a chance to have. And I'm about 3 years ago, I met a young woman. She called me up to talk to me about doing a graduation speech. And she said to me, "You won't remember me, but I'm one of the children from Aunt Maggie's Kitchen Table that went to summer arts program because I got the housing authority to pay for these children to go to the arts program at Wesleyan College in Macon, Georgia. So they spent 6 weeks doing dance and art and theater and going to plays, because these are the things that help you build confidence and build a sense of agency that get beyond just knowing how to read and write. And so I want to see, I said to Deborah, I think we need to be doing Saturday schools now, or after school, Saturday, Sunday. We need to be doing school night and day, actually, when the children come home from school, they need some more school because they need to be able to do these kind of artistic things. They need to be doing stuff that helps to build their sense of self and their sense of self-esteem. And when I saw Deborah's curriculum, well, first of all, when I just heard her talk about how we need to be approaching education, it made me thrilled because I remembered those children. And, I got a lot of volunteers to come and help do this work. We didn't have much money and we didn't have money to pay people. So I used students and then teachers that would be willing to come on Saturdays, and had one teacher to work with the children to write. Can you imagine you're a little kid in a school where everybody in your school is on free lunch and you have a book in the library with your name on it?
Mm.
So they had a book. They wrote their own book and they got 2 copies, one to keep for themselves and one to go in their school library. They can come back to that school years later and find their little book that they wrote in their school library. And just to have your own identity like that, and then to take them, even just taking them on a Saturday morning field trip to a bookstore and letting them roam around in the bookstore and seeing what that feels like. I mean, those are small things, but they make such a difference in your sense of self, your sense of self-esteem. We taught etiquette classes, and we took the kids to eat after the end of their class, and I'll stop talking after this because this was so funny. They would not use their cloth napkins because they thought they were too pretty. So they were asking, can we have some paper napkins? We don't want to mess up these napkins. And we were saying, those napkins are for you. You use them, we'll give you another one, but you don't get paper. And this young woman came as a volunteer, brought her own china and silverware and tablecloths and worked with these children after school. That's priceless. That is just priceless. When they go off to college, they don't have to worry if they get a chance to go off to college. They won't have to be at a loss if they get invited to a reception or something. They feel at home because they've had that experience. And you cannot duplicate that. I mean, those experiences have to be provided. And if you don't have them, you just feel like a fish out of water. And I knew that experience because I went to substandard Arkansas schools and graduated and went off to California to college. And I felt like I was on another planet. Now when I think about it, as an 80-year-old, I look back at that and think, gosh, you were smart and you were so resilient because you were so out of your element. I mean, I'd never seen an escalator before, and I hadn't been to a play. I'd never been in a theater to a live play. And I'm sitting in classrooms with folks that have, gone to plays, have been in plays, and I mean, you just are behind, and there's nothing you can do about that. But we could do something about that. And I would hope someday that our children would have better opportunities for these kinds of things, because I don't think public schools necessarily going to provide all that for them. So that's why I think every church ought to have be having a Saturday school every Saturday, and it should be kids running around learning, reading, and working on stuff and doing things that they don't do 5 days a week. And they love it. They don't mind it. They won't complain. They love to do it. They love the attention. They're creative. They're brilliant, and their brilliance needs to be honored like that. So when I heard her curriculum, I said, it's so cool. And why don't we have that out where people can take advantage of it?
So Dr. Meeks, I appreciate that. And Dr. Warfield is trying to get on. She's out at the lake house, and the internet is not easy to intercept. So she's trying to get on a call basis. But I want to say that Kharen might have been too young, and maybe even Kwame. These are my nephew and my cousin, and they come from the background of the blessing of being able to be exposed to volumes of everything, from leadership to engagement to advocacy. Those, we just took it as an automatic, but we also knew we were gifted, and it was a opportunity that our peers didn't always get. And that's what, as we come into the stages, Kwame had a program after school in Portland where his son was, I think, about what, 7 years old at the time, Kwame, where you had an after school program. Can you talk just a little bit about that piece that you did with the schools in terms of engaging people in engineering and exposing young people to engineering?
Yeah, but no, the Mesa program, mathematics, engineering, science achievement was brought up. It's funny. I see it started out in San Francisco. With us, the background there, Carolyn, with the Golden Gate. That's where the program was brought from by and back then they had Matthew Prophet and Dr. What was his name? Chappie. What the heck? We knew him as Chappie. Anyway, he was the vice superintendent, and they worked and brought this curriculum up here, and based on a lot of exposing us to math and then engineering and just getting us into the realm. And and that was what and back in the day, that's what brought us out here. Then David, because her brother, my dad, they went back to, and we went down there and lived in old Vincennes, Indiana, down there, the little tiny ass the Fort Wayne, the person in
It's
Fort
Rutledge.
Wayne. It's funny because when I think back to Fort Wayne and where that's where the Warfields originated from. Then we went full circle and went back down there to deeper into Vincennes, Indiana, and I can always remember that being one of the most racist little towns that when I sit back, I was like, wow, that place was crazy. But we were equipped as young men and women, like you said, the Warfield family, of being around so much of just being youth that that the racism it didn't affect me. Because I just remember the little Johnny talking to me. Yeah, man, but he was one cool little kid lived down the street, but he was nigger, nigger, nigger like all the time. Yeah, I was watching these. I remember him telling about these shows. I was watching niggers on this show, and I would just sit there and crack up and just laugh at his sheer level of ignorance. But it's not his fault. Again, it goes back to, like you're saying, exposure. When we talk about exposure for youth and it's a universe. That when kids are not exposed, they just soak in whatever's around them. And when you're not exposed to the right stuff, you're exposed to the wrong. It's not your fault. You just don't know no better. So you develop your whole life around what you just don't know. So it works out, and so those programs that we were exposed to, I can go back and remember we went that Mesa program. When you talk about Saturday School, Miss Meeks, they provided us a program. I remember I went for 2 Saturdays, or no, 2 years of Saturdays we got a chance to go to Reed College. Reed College is one of the most prestigious little private universities on the planet. And anybody knows who's in academia knows what they had a nuclear reactor on that campus. And we got a chance to go look at this nuclear reactor, and see that water glow blue. Of like, hey, something's going on down there. So and when you talk about exposure, unfortunately, the world has changed and things like that. And these poor little kids, you can't get access to that no more. Just due to the circumstances in the world we're living in. Just all the protections and the different things due to the people of other ignorant people who weren't exposed doing things, and now we're having to deal with precedents that have been set by people who weren't exposed to the right stuff, and now we have to fight through these precedents that were created by folks who didn't know and just made bad stuff. So it just becomes a bigger circle of challenges that we have to deal with, because people who didn't know, when they talk about the populations, that the terrorism and things, that's the only way they get these little kids to do this ridiculously bad stuff. They shelter them from the rest of the world and feed them this ideology and tell them that this mess is real when they know it's not right. But they're just like we're no better here in America because we indoctrinate our family and people into this military complex. Like I watched, we just lost Stephen due to that. He got out the military and didn't know what the fuck to do with himself. Just didn't. He went there, the construct, he did great. He spent 20 plus years in the military. He got there. But when he got out, the nigga just didn't know what to do. So he sat there and drank himself to death. And that's what he followed the exact path of his mother.
Yeah.
When she got appointed, she just drank herself because why? Again, not knowing what to do with themselves because of circumstances and exposure and not having, even with the folks in support, but just not being from the jump youth of understanding stuff. So you just get older. Because you're not exposed, you don't get if you're not exposed from the jump, you accept these prejudices and these chains and these things and identities and stuff. You just get older. You don't get any, you're not gonna get any better if you don't get a chance, because at that point you've established what you feel and what you want to work towards. So if you're not willing or don't have the gumption to do it, it just keeps going on. So, in terms of exposure and programs, it's beyond important in what we have to do to continually figure out how to put this stuff together. And it's going to be, and when we talk about the way cancer has been treated, we're probably not going to be able to cure this, but we have to continue to put forth the efforts and the strategies to expose folks to deal with what is going to be exposed in their life. So if you do come across a cancer or one thing that comes in your life, you know how to deal with it and be able to move forward and just not have it take you out. And like you say, we watch so many other things in people's family. It doesn't have to be cancer, just other things that just take people out.
Yeah. One more quick just because we're on this path of Allison and I saw a need in an urban coffee house. And it was right down the street from Lincoln Elementary. And we, along with a bunch of other women in the community who just had kind of frequented the coffee house and also were invested in kids in the community in general, decided to create a literacy program where they would we'd go down to the school and they'd walk down to the coffee shop every week and be engaged with reading and literacy engagements one-on-one. And we had some other special things and some creative stuff that happened during that time. But it was a beautiful way to engage the community in an alternative way to support an urban coffee house and to engage kids in things that they wouldn't have normally been involved in at all. And it wasn't really long lasting, but again, it's exposure. It's that kid will remember walking from school with someone who cared about them being expanded into literacy. Aunt Martha's on the call, getting ready to come to the call too, and I want to make time for her to introduce herself as well and talk a little bit about the after school program that they had in partnership with the college and the communities and the churches at that time. The curriculum?
The curriculum, yeah.
Yes, I will. I want one more quick just because we're on this path of Allison and I saw a need in an urban coffee house. And it was right down the street from Lincoln Elementary. And we, along with a bunch of other women in the community who just had kind of frequented the coffee house and also were invested in kids in the community in general, decided to create a literacy program where they would we'd go down to the school and they'd walk down to the coffee shop every week and be engaged with reading and literacy engagements one-on-one. And we had some other special things and some creative stuff that happened during that time. But it was a beautiful way to engage the community in an alternative way to support an urban coffee house and to engage kids in things that they wouldn't have normally been involved in at all. And it wasn't really long lasting, but again, it's exposure. It's that kid will remember walking from school with someone who cared about them being expanded into literacy. Martha's on the call, getting ready to come to the call too, and I want to make time for her to introduce herself as well and talk a little bit about the after-school program that they had in partnership with the college and the communities and the churches at that time.
Well, you know what, if you just talk about it a little bit, that would probably be all right too.
Okay. Because I don't want to get off track of the call, but basically the curriculum is community cultural wealth and the cycle of liberation curriculum for 8th grade Afro girls. They will be engaged in a very interactive community cultural wealth aspects and the cycle of liberation in a way that they come out of it really understanding the wealth that they walk with, the wealth that they're born into, but they don't necessarily understand. They don't necessarily see how it plays itself out in terms of the aspects of familial, navigational, resistant, all those 6 capitals in combination are empowering. And so they will learn that they are enough, that they are powerful, that they are the future, their voices and their power, and they will understand some more of the mechanics of how to walk from an how do I say, an incident that kind of has a wake-up call in your life that says, okay, what do I do with that? And the cycle of liberation has a history of walking people from an incident towards a very liberatory aspect. And so they learn that they are the cycle and they become the change. They learn that they are rooted, they are worthy, they're brilliant, and they're unstoppable. And it's all engaging. And a lot of it is autoethnographic because they tell their own stories and pull them into the curriculum. And I tell my story because I'm the little girl who over my decades evolved into someone who was able to capture and grasp a different pathway to liberatory consciousness. So it's very, very powerful. It came out of a self-study for my second year in my doctoral program, where I learned about the cycle, the community cultural wealth and its aspects. But the research says that there's an engagement model missing. And so it's been used in various sparse places and ways, but this engages our Afro girls around the world, but particularly in the United States, in understanding that and then applying it and actually bringing it into their own energy and their own purpose. And I chose 8th grade girls because that's such a significant year and age of development and identity searching and all that. And so what happens is those girls will then receive a certificate of completion, and then I'm going to identify and find out ways to then have them go into a train the trainer track, because then they can take what they've engaged, what they've learned, and what they've experienced and what they've come to understand, and in ways that they can then share that with their peers, share that with their families, share that with their organizations that they're in. And I'll just be burdened, this whole piece will just be burdened little troublers and changers, and while it's empowering them. And so that is the Community Cultural Wealth and Cycle of Liberation curriculum. I've completed it. It's an entire fully manual package for licensure, but I'm protecting it because it's not going into the whole world. It's only for 8th grade Afro girls right now. Pretty soon I'll be creating the one for college students that will be 50% in the classroom and 50% in a social change activity that they have designed. So those are the only 2 sectors that will be able to touch this curriculum. So it's an infant stage. It hasn't even been contracted out yet. It's so fresh right now. And I'm so open to the how of where it goes next. But I just finished the manual and everything about 2 weeks ago. And I've got this wonderful, beautiful title page.
If you are a poor child or a child of color that is in a, not getting what you need, it is assumed that you don't have much to bring to the table.
Mhm.
And the fact that we say you've got a lot to bring to the table is just that it needs to be recognized. It needs to be built upon. I don't think I ever had anybody telling me when I was a kid in school that, about my resources. It was always about the deficits,
Yeah.
always what you don't get right, what you don't know, rather than, well, what do you know? And what gifts do you have? And how I was in a substandard school, so there wasn't much chance to show that, it was,
Right.
and there was no reinforcement for a kind of innate capacity and curiosity and all of those things that are truly gifts.
While I find out to pull this into it, I'd like for my Aunt Martha to just introduce yourself.
I can only say that when we put a program together in Kalamazoo that included the set that you're talking about, young Black females, it wasn't restricted to them. It was open to the community in terms of male and female, and for kids who identified as African American. And it wasn't based on the wonderful concepts that you're raising. It was based on the theory and practice that we had learned in terms of how people learn, the various ways they learn, and then teaching information towards their ability to learn, which ended up being what they called accelerated learning. And that I have on a video. I'd be glad to send to you and you can share it because it really talks to the kids, talks about the kids, the people who were working in the program, including Sharon, your sister, and Raja for a short period of time was involved. They were all volunteers, community people who saw the need to help kids reach their potential. And it was based on their sense of accomplishment, based on what they were grade level learning and being able to achieve, which actually in a lot of ways turned their sense of their self into some pretty positive people. And kids who came through that program in the community still, I've run into some of them now, and they're people who were very successful, felt good about themselves from the time they were in that program until they became adults and now have children of their own. So it had some long lasting effect on kids. And it was based on theoretical information that had been researched. It was not just idea. It was put together based on what we know was important. And there was research that had been done where it had been in operation and they had already had successes before we started. So that's a short summary of what I can say about the program right now, but it was community-based organization, community-based education. We were endorsed by the community and by the school district. They gave us support. Our funding, we didn't pay anybody, by the way. It was all voluntary. Everybody who participated in the program did it because they thought it was important. We met in locations around the city that were open to that, including churches and community centers, probably a couple of hundred kids and only from October to May. So we were only 9 months, 10 months into the year, 2 days a week for an hour and a half, if you can figure that all out.
It would be great to see the video.
I'd be glad to share it with you. I guess, Deborah, if I send it to you, you can figure out how to put it online.
All right. That sounds good. Again, the purpose of this was just to learn a little bit about who had some like-minded concerns about community and our children, to talk a little bit about what we are doing individually in our spaces right now and what we see. And out of this came a conversation with Dr. Meeks and I about the possibility of partnering. And I believe, Aunt Martha, you all partnered with churches too. And so that was an intentional piece. So Dr. Meeks and I were talking about what would it look like if we engage that conversation about partnering with churches for a Saturday school that empowers kids in ways that they're lacking right now. The sky is open as to how that looks. I've done some deep work. I've got, some logic model stuff about what I think. I've got some ideas about different components, but I didn't want this to be Deborah's, great idea. And how do you guys like it? Okay, let's jump on that. I wanted it to be a community conversation of care that says, okay, let's do some basics. If we want it to last, we can't throw it together. If you want a good home cooked meal, we can't just expect this thing to just pop up. Even the people who are on this call may not be the birth of how this thing even rolls out as a potential national initiative, but we had to start somewhere. Dr. Meeks and I said, let's just get some voices at the table and maybe begin to talk about if we could envision together, first of all, how do people feel about the value, the worth, the importance, the timing of even talking about a Saturday empowerment school in partnership with churches and community? And put that out there. And we're not going to stay on the call for 10 years, but let's get some feedback from everyone about what are your thoughts on what's the value of that? What could that look like? Is that something that would be meaningful? If so, what are the first things we need to avoid and the first things we need to think about? And we put our hats together about that topic. So let's just jump in on that. Who wants to respond to that question? Honestly, openly. That's why we're here.
Well, let me just say in the Kalamazoo area, one of the things that is already in place are individual groups that do, of course, include um, churches and other organizations, and they're really pretty much operating individually. So there's no connection between them and what you're talking about. Their work is mostly engaging kids in some positive behaviors and things that they can do after school and places that they can go and have some support. So it's a whole different world right now. And to the extent that anything that would develop in this area, the first thing would be to find out what already is in operation before you even suggest anything new, because the people who are already doing what they're doing also would have to be involved in the process of putting together something that's direction in the direction that you're defining. And I don't disagree with what you're doing. I'm just saying
Investment.
if there are groups that are already doing some things, they're going to want to be recognized for what they're doing. And then on top of that, they're going to want to be included in whatever is going to be most helpful to the students. So that would have to be introduced to those groups and
Okay.
collaboration between them. And when you mentioned churches were involved, they were only involved in the sense that they provided a site location more so than them inputting anything into the program. We brought the people and the students to those locations. It wasn't a church involvement other than support.
Okay.
But nevertheless, I'm just saying, I don't know any other community except this one, and it's been a while since I've actually been engaged in that kind of stuff. But I can tell you just this past week at the school board meeting, both high schools had presentations by students, and you would be surprised to the effect that the students are putting things together for themselves in both all three high schools in Kalamazoo. And they are doing such a big job that that stuff is being replicated other places too. So that is on line. I think I can send you the school board meeting and you can look at it online and you'll see where these students are reporting what they've been doing. It's pretty fantastic stuff
Awesome.
coming from the students themselves and supported by whatever program within their schools. Understand what they're doing, but these are African American, both male and female, working with other kids in their particular schools, and they've had some tremendous increases in graduation. They've had decreases in students dropping out. All of the things that K-12 is supposed to do, they've been able to achieve. I think coming from the students themselves, it's got a heck of a lot of support. So I'll share
That's
that.
awesome. I hear you say,
That's good news.
yep. I hear you say assessment is key to find out what's actually going on. I hear you saying that uh, inclusion is important in terms of who's in at the conversation about folks that are currently doing. I hear you say the value of student-driven engagement is on the rise in ways that is transforming things. And then also the question of how are churches currently involved or potentially able to be involved, other than are they only going to be a site where
Well,
they
the churches are doing what the churches are able to do with the staff that they have and the space that they have. And for the most part, they're aiming a lot of their activities towards preschool and early child care and early child, probably through early elementary. But they're working a lot with children who are preschool age. And I just talked to one of the programs at one of the churches right now, and that's their purpose. That's what they're serving. And typically, they're serving people who are either members of their church or in the neighborhood of their church. There's a couple of programs that aim their program at middle school kids, and they've created their own identity as to who they serve and what they do. Not many of them are talking about it from the perspective of their who they are in terms of their philosophy based on the fact that they're African American and have a historical reference for themselves. That I don't think that any of them are talking from that perspective, but you don't have to talk from that perspective if you represent that in the first place, and that's what they do. So these kids have a place to go, which is essentially African American centered with African American staff and support, and they're getting reinforced on positive things that those people who are working in those programs can do. Not all of them have teachers. Some of them have people who are professional. A lot of them have volunteers. And they do some things for the older the kids are, the more they have to invite them in. Free haircuts, have a lunch, whatever it takes to get the kids to come. They're claiming that that's been successful. I don't have any evaluation. I don't know that anything's been done on that, but I can tell you that the overall effect, according to the data that the district is sharing, is that the increase in graduation rates and the decrease in the number of students who have been put out on disciplinary, and particularly Black males, has gone down. So everybody's claiming that things that they're doing is working. That's a summary of what's happening here.
Okay. All right, thank you. Other thoughts from other folks about the value, the worth, the considerations?
I definitely believe there's much value in the work, and I too would have to do some investigation. But as far as I know, and I know our community pretty well, I don't know anything like this in the churches that's long term. I know that, for instance, um, when they got rid of or excluded a cursive writing from the curriculum, which was absolutely so crazy to see our babies having to mark an X for their names. Um, that there was some short-term response to that, but that didn't have any longevity. So I'd be willing to do, some research because Deborah, if the curriculum sounds very interesting, and it seems like something that would be good for our community.
Okay. Researching and identifying and pinpointing. Any other thoughts from anyone else around the circle about considerations, about value, about worth, about just current perceptions? Kwame, you work with a lot of youth programs with your children over the years, and you've been involved with partners that are doing some work with the youth. And what are your thoughts on what we're imagining? What we've
I will
talked
tell you from just this last journey I've been in for being exposed to the Native American culture from an inside out scenario and seeing things. I can remember talking to Uncle Chuck about his work at Martha when you guys were in U of O and way back of working with the Warm Springs tribe. I have had access to members of the Warm Spring tribe because Kenny has family members that are from there, and she has grandkids that are living there and dealing in the aspects and seeing those circles of what, talk to Uncle Chuck about what they did and how the aspects of exposure and different things, but just seeing still the reflections of not, it's a universal thing. It's not just us Black folks. When we talk about what we were talking about earlier, the different cultures and stuff, and taking the lessons from each other and bringing the different cultures together and taking different models and different aspects of progress, things that are working good and others, and the aspects of scourges going through different communities. Because I watch, we grew up watching the crack just take out the Black folks, but I've been watching this whole aspects of this fentanyl just taking out these Native Americans, just taking them out. Just the same way crack came through and took out our community. It's setting up generational pieces that are going to have to be dealt with and try to figure out and have to work from behind this 8 ball that's being put in front of us by those that we ain't bringing this shit here. We didn't bring the crack here. So to aspects of using different tools of disenfranchisement and aspects, but also seeing the things that we can do for, because I look at I look at the health clinic scenarios being thought of, and then, talking to Uncle Chuck about the aspects of when he was involved of a, at Martha, you guys starting the health clinics and the health scenario things of different communities, and you guys in your own Mark, when you had the health clinic back in the days, that's still to this day aspects are still going on with it, and it's growing and it's changed, and the growth of where it's at and how you're still exposing and trying to figure out the issues that are just continue to circle back and deal with our communities and figure out the ways that those who are still trying to keep us down, it's in this community up here. I look at, this is a huge agricultural community up here that I live in now. I mean, it's giant. And we talk about the homesteading, and we spoke earlier. It's like, yeah, you look at these families and stuff who are established and stuff. It's like, yeah, they just, when they were giving this dirt up here, said, here's a rope, just take some free land, and now you're set amongst, and there's no, and from that point, other cultures that weren't given that rope to just rope off some land, you can never catch up. There's no way that you can ever catch up because it's behind you from a piece that you can't deal with. That you got folks that are sitting on multi-billion-dollar industries based on a piece of rope that they're given to say, hey, here's yours, but we just weren't invited to that party. We were invited to different rope parties. So unfortunately, so those aspects of changing and growth and looking at aspects in communities and efforts of having to take models and see what has worked and what is going to work and what we still have to work from. There's so many similarities just based on these economics that at this gas, and that is now out here, it's $6.09 a gallon. It's messing with the whole growth. Now we put a whole nother stunt in front of exposure, because now can't nobody go nowhere. You're stuck. You can't afford to barely go to work, and if you do got a job. So these circles of working with these kids and getting this exposure and getting these two things and working with the different community centers, and like you saying that, Martha, just not, you can't put demands on folks to provide people and curriculum and all. We just got some space. You're gonna have to work on bringing in your own folks and stuff, because our staff and funding and this is what we can do, but we can't. So here's some space and work through, and we're going to provide you some opportunity, which is just give you a place with a roof over it that's not outside on a negative 20-degree day in the wintertime, for some folks to get together and just start figuring out their things. So in terms, I won't talk too much more, but it's the exposure of everybody and looking at what we're doing, and the different communities continuing to look at these models which have been rehashed and redone, and just now they talk AI and all this, it's just dangerous. No, you got to use these tools which are giving it to us. It's like looking at this, and Debbie, we've talked about for the last 20 years the data, just getting the data to just bring it all together, and now utilizing these tools that are for us to make the data work for us, and don't be so afraid of, whoa, it's terrible, and just adapt and grow with this technology that we have to do. Like we came from this family of preachers and teachers, but myself went on this other path of let me get in this technology to be able to show these babies that you ain't got to be afraid of it. I made this stuff, y'all. It ain't gonna kill you. You just have to understand it and adapt it and let it work into your life to make it easier, which is the whole point of why we've engineered all this stuff to come together, is to just make life easier, because you don't have to use as much energy doing something, and you're able to put that energy for future efforts and making things grow. So that's my piece.
I think, Deborah, it feels positive to me to have your curriculum licensed so that people could opt to use it and contract for it or something. and that some people that are already doing things wherever they happen to be might find that it easy, that they find it interesting to think of how they might incorporate some of this or switch gears even. I mean, I just don't, I'm not in that sphere of that educational world here in Atlanta. I'm in a completely different world, so I don't really know exactly all of what's going on with the in actuality on a day-to-day basis with schools and after school programs. But it seems to me what I do recall is that people are always interested in hearing about new innovative things that will actually um, enhance the work they're trying to do.
Mhm.
And I just think that some more exploring is going to be important to see where, as folks have been saying, where what's going on and what are people interested in trying to do and how do people want to expand. And, people are not always necessarily understanding about liberation. They don't see things in those kinds of terms that you're talking about. So
Mhm.
so it I mean it'll take a bit of talking to folks, I think, and helping people to understand what this is about and we're trying to go and what is the value of that.
Okay.
Because there's a difference between teaching people to survive and teaching people to be liberated.
Yeah.
And
And
Yeah,
there's, go ahead.
I gotta get off the line because I'm losing power, but I agree wholeheartedly with what she just said. And let me say to you, there's an importance in terms of liberation that needs to be taught and learned, and it needs to be incorporated in things that are possibly already going on so that there's not this program or that program, but that it's a united kind of thing towards
Mhm.
and understanding what the goals are and then trying to make all
Mhm.
those things happen. So I'm going to send you information. This
Okay.
would be considered historical at this point because
Okay.
it was before anything that we're talking
Right.
about now. It didn't have
Right.
any
Right. Right.
artificial intelligence, all that kind of stuff going on.
Right.
It was based on a very different kind of premise, and I think with the same thought that Kwame talked about and everybody else, even back in the day at the University of Oregon, it was really all about at that point with those students who they went out and recruited and brought to the university. It was really about giving those students from the Indian reservations, those students who were migrants coming out of the fields and were working in the fields, and those kids that they brought up out of LA who came out of Watts at a time when the University of Oregon did not have any diversity in its student body and wanted to do something. And that's how but that was a single professor who put together a very big, bright idea and it became what it was. So I can talk about that at another point in time. But I'll send stuff to you, Deborah, and hopefully after you've had this conversation with everybody, there can be another meeting after some more thought has gone into how can this be distributed into communities that may not have anything going on, or how can it be incorporated into some communities that already have something but maybe not have dealt with it from that perspective? I think it's all good.
Okay, I'm writing these notes down about liberation, about expanded worldviews like Kwame talked about, because and even from Dr. Meeks' book about once we collaborate together as collective marginalized folk, there's a lot of power in that. Dr. Rutledge, I understand your storm is kicking you off with the internet. I will be in touch with you directly. Dr. Meeks has my contact information, so we can speak, and I can make sure to send things to you as well. Kharen and Allison, do you guys have any final thoughts on the conversation and what value, what worth, what things to think about, what truthfully do we need to call out at this stage of everything?
Well, well, first of all, what I was reminded of when you were talking about urban blend and also with the girls of color is, Deborah, you've got I'm sure this program's just as beautiful as those are. And what I learned when we were doing those was those any young girls or children who interacted with you are better for it. And so I just want you to know that, even though, they didn't continue, I just know that you really impacted a lot of youth in this community. And I just wanted to say that out loud because as we learned with Urban Blend, there's that notion of not duplicating programming. And what was frustrating for me with that was here are these children that are right by this coffee shop, and here's these women that want to serve these little children, and the grant funders are like, you're duplicating something else. Well, these children, they can get to this coffee shop, and these women are willing to do this. That was incredibly didn't make sense to me. So I know that that frustration's out there, but I always have to remember that those children, even if it wasn't a lot, and the program benefited from that. So I just wanted to remind that. The other thing is that I know I've shared with you this woman named Dr. Nikki Lanier, who is in Louisville, Kentucky, and she has an organization called the Rare Women Collective that I'm part of. But I know she's also starting. It's brand new. It's called the Common Grove, and I believe she is working with youth or children or something. It's like she just started putting stuff out about it. So what I think I'll do is I can send an email to the two of you, and she may also know somebody who would be interested in using this, because she's really connected now, has connected with a lot of women across the country who are doing a variety of things, and she may have somebody that she would know
Okay.
that you could visit with. So that's my thoughts on that. And
Thank you. Kharen. So,
Yeah.
your thoughts.
Well, thanks for the opportunity, Deb. I only have Kalamazoo as a reference for the last 20 years or so. And I think Mom really hit the high notes. And, she's the author of Community-Based Education in Kalamazoo. So she would be the expert. I think my observation has been that Kalamazoo and this community has really grown. There are lots and lots and lots of nonprofits now. And everyone has this niche, and I don't even know how they find enough kids to fill all these different nonprofits. It's become the new profit center, are these nonprofits. And so everybody's got their lane. Oh no, everybody's making money off of these nonprofits deliberately. I had people walking around my department on the adult ed floor talking about me and my husband are going to start a nonprofit. I mean, it's real. And so I don't know, Deb, I think that whatever you have developed, I'm sure it is great because you have such great ideas. I guess the only thing that comes to me is how would you market it and such that it can be maybe content for all of the many different learning channels, all nonprofits that are out here doing something. Can it be something that people could assimilate into what they're already doing? Maybe it has some elasticity that will allow for that content theoretically to fit lots of different models of different programming that's out here because everybody is fighting for that dollar to keep all these different things. And to me, I don't know where all these kids are coming from. I mean, we have gotten an influx with the promise and things of that nature, but like I don't know how you keep splitting and splitting and splitting. It's like
Yeah.
too many Black Greek functions on one night. You're going to cannibalize your audience because there ain't that many folks that are going to be around to attend. Right. You taking my 10 and we wanted 20 and you took 10 and I got your other 10. So only 10 people showed up
Yeah.
instead of the 20 that we planned on. So that's just what comes to me. And that's pretty superficial because I have not really been in this space in quite a while. But I do think that you always have fantastic ideas. And wherever you decide to market this, I I think it might be beneficial to make sure you understand the landscape of where that's going to fit because it's going to be different in every space and every place. I will say for me, Mom and I talk all the time about what's happening with Black kids in school. And I've always said that Saturday schools have been it. I saw my little Greek friends going to Saturday schools. Two or three of them are lawyers now. I see um, the Jewish kids going to their synagogue schools. I forget the name, forgive me. But, I think we have to have that when you come from an ethnicity that it's not represented by the majority, because if you don't have the inner knowing and inner self-love and all that that means, I mean, there's 1,000 words that mean all that. But if you don't have that, it's hard to sustain your vision and your dream and where you want to go and all the different images and entities and forces that come against you. So that place in that space where kids can come together and be in a protected space, even for a period of time, whether it's to learn something or to experience art, as Mrs. Meeks was saying, whatever that is, giving people that space. I mean, bringing them together to play chess. I mean, I don't really care what that is, but where they can be affirmed in whatever they're learning and whatever that can be is really the most important thing. Because I have built those spaces in my classroom, and all my students are not Black. But I have built that between various schools coming together, 9 different school districts, Vicksburg being Vicksburg, Kalamazoo Central being Kalamazoo Central, and I make all those kids interact. And so I don't know that you have to restrict it to just a race because racism makes white people just as ignorant.
Yeah.
Everybody needs uplifting. Everybody needs eye-opening experiences. And some of the white kids I met when I really got into after, DSEG, some of the things I learned from white kids were just as meaningful as what I learned from Black history to understand their perspective. So I think that's the answer, and we've come so far. Like, I've never seen white people this mad about Trump. I think it's hilarious to see white people finally as mad as Black folks have been for years and years and years. I think it's great. I want them to be really mad. They should do it for about 2, 3 generations, then they really understand. But at least they're mad now. And I'm
Yeah.
glad that they're mad, and I'm glad that they understand now what we felt for a long time. So it's not a bad thing what's happening because they're growing too. And I appreciate the fact that they want to grow. And to
Yeah.
the extent that their people's children's generationally, they have Black friends now that they love and they care about, and they see how it impacts them. I mean, that's all in God's plan to me. So I'm just grateful for the opportunity to help in any way. I'm tired though, Deb. I ain't gonna lie. I'm tired.
Yeah.
Y'all, I got my citizenship. I'm going to
Yeah.
Mexico. I'm working on my Spanish.
Yeah.
Because I think I'm ready to pass the baton, but I'm here for you in whatever way I can be. But I need a rest because this struggle right here, I think it's a level of crazy that I think we should all think about. I think we should all think about how to survive the crazy. And I'm not a fearmonger. I'm
Yeah.
just saying I think they got some special crazy stuff coming, and I'm just not here for it. So personally, that's me. But I wish everybody out here fighting the fight in whatever way they choose to. Much love, and I'll support them in whatever way. If it's on my path to getting to Mexico, I'm there for you. If not, I'll tell you where you can live when you come down here. That's how I feel
You'll
about it.
provide a respite. Maybe we'll
I
have
will
some
help you.
getaways.
I will connect you. That's where my mission is going to be because there's already huge Black expat communities going there. When I went to the consulate, I won't go into, I saw nothing but Black women. There was about 10 of us in there. Out of the 200 people that were in there, to have about 10 Black women all from the United States, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah.
I
Well,
love
thank
you.
you. Thank you, though, for that.
The
And
the
did I-
president of Mexico is a sharp woman too. I like her.
She is.
Yeah.
Gosh,
Yeah.
makes me so mad that can you imagine if Kamala and she were together, the world would be just a different place.
Yeah.
And
We
some of
wouldn't
us
be talking we wouldn't be talking about invading.
some of us have been mad since Reagan.
If Vice President Harrison, the Mexican president, were colleagues, we wouldn't be talking about invading Cuba,
No.
because it's such a dumb conversation.
Yes, and
But anyway,
yeah,
I
but
also want to say, Kharen, your father was one of my instructors at Western Michigan University in my doctoral program, and I know of your mother, and so and your family has had a huge impact on my life here and there, all over Kalamazoo. So, and I don't know that I've met you yet, but now I've met you too. And Kwame, I've heard about you. So,
well, I go back to the people that we started on the call with behind me in this picture. This is nothing new. It's a legacy that we've inherited. That we look at
Yeah.
something, we see what it looks like, we see how it could be better, and we try to evoke whatever that better might look. And we try to engage people. We've always been community engagers. That's what we are. And all of the good, the bad, and the ugly that might have come across the history of different pieces of our family. That's who we've been. And so I can't run away from that assignment if I want to. But I'm grateful for everybody that's been here today. I'm grateful for the conversation we had. I've got really juicy nuggets of things that we can take away and think about and kind of I hear that there's an expansion. I hear that there's liberation. I hear that there's a need for understanding conditioning. I hear that there's a need for tailoring and approaching things from a perspective that really adapts to where things are different and not just kind of cookie cutter stuff. It's a task that's bigger than us and is going to need the ancestral help and the cosmological help from above, because we have to come from a new place. We have to come from an expanded place. Yet the old places says we've always had the truths to tap into. We just haven't always figured out how to do that. So again, I will take these notes. I will take these thoughts. I'll listen back to this.
Can I get into? I just want to add a piece to all this thing. I'm working with a program down in called Rockwood Youth Foundation, and we talk about starting nonprofits and things and stuff like this for whatever. But this nonprofit I started with my buddy Ray. Ray is a Woods, and Clarence and his wife were part of that Project 70 thing that Aunt Marty talked about. They did way back in the day. And so, and my dad, then my dad was part of coordinating all that and making it happen. And so for the proof in the pudding of, shit working of efforts, we're talking about. That was in the 60s. Now we're in 2026 and we're getting ready to start our third year of it's a youth baseball and softball oriented program, but we're working with the wraparound scenario facilities, but just to be able to talk about, and we're talking about things, but to show years of growth and proof in the pudding of things really happening and getting money and funding for growth and showing, hey, this is something that we're looking at families that have came together and efforts now for 40 plus years of collaboration on things and just putting in the seeds of just, me and Ray, that's why we've always been close, because we knew our family was close from way back then. So I just want to put that to say that here, I can attest to facts of what all this stuff really works and how we just do have to just keep coming together to just create the next generation of grabbing into this. So I just want to say that part of I'm involved with something to show that we can show the growth. We can track it to dates of like when somebody once asked, well, how did he said no? Okay. I had uncles that went way back, started, had aspects of going out here and did whatever uncle, listen to Uncle John talking when the story, then pulling out the pistol in the dean's office and slamming it on the desk back at U of O back in the days. You talk about things like that. It's like, yeah, that was real ish. And to this day, that even at this perspective of like, could Uncle John have done that today? Nah. It wouldn't have worked, but the fact that he did and put the impacts, and when they talk about things that are real, that's the things that are the beauty to be able to talk about. When and Debbie, we're talking about just before you got on the call of showing just you working with you and you're just proof in the pudding of things that you've done over the years. When we came and visited you when you had the little youth studio in the middle school there. And having the kids doing the video productions, that was over 20, 25 years ago and now to what we're doing. So anyway, I won't keep it going, but I just wanted to get that point of talking about truth and realities of when people really want to ask how we can truly put all this together to show what impact it's really had.
Okay. Well, I am, again, I'm grateful. I want to be collaborative. I want to be regenerative. I want to be visionary. That's what I've been studying my entire life, but in these past 3 years, how to take it and make it come alive, how to be a part of it. And it's leading from behind. It's engaging the right people at the stakeholder table. It's taking what was good in the past. It's getting rid of what doesn't work in the current, and it's forecasting out into the future about what we need to bring into here. That's what regenerative is all about. And then add that visionary piece is that expansion that we've always done in indigenous cultures. We've just not been in the box. We don't come from the box, so we don't live, learn, and grow and change in a box. And then the last piece that's exciting for me is liberatory consciousness is the common thing that came out of what we were talking about today. Yes, we got this, that, and the other, but it's got to be result in an expanded consciousness. You know, it doesn't mean we have to change what the people are already doing, but we have some opportunities to shed some new light. I can even imagine, I've got some colleagues that have done some work on conditioning and done some work on indigenous presence of Africans before the Americans, even before the Native Americans even got to the Americas. And there's just so much that we don't know. And that's across cultures too, like you were talking about. We are stronger together. And so how do we do that? So that it becomes an eye opener for kids about expanded worldviews too. So it's a very layered piece of pie that we're talking about, but it also can happen, and it can be put together so that it has all the elasticity that we've talked about today, because there's the need, and we're not going to rest until we respond to what has pricked our hearts to come to this call today. So thank you to all of you. Know that it's the beginning of the seed planting and the conversation and the slow walk that can't take too much longer to seed because of the need. But it's the way you start the conversation is to just talk about where we're at. Dr. Meeks, do you have any closing comments?
Well, I'm just glad to have met everybody and glad we all agree that our children are worth saving. All of our children are worth saving, period. And we're responsible for them too, because they cannot raise themselves. So, and I'm glad to be with people who know that and appreciate that and are committed to that and willing to do what you can to live into the truth of that. So it's good to be here, and I look forward to more conversations.
I'll be looking for your book.
I have to
Thank
ask
you.
the book. Yeah, you can put it in the chat real quick if you want to, so those can keep it.
Well, it's Bridging the Rivers of Difference. If you just remember that, if you want to Bridging the Rivers of Difference, and my name, if you go Google that, it's on Amazon and Church Publishing, and you can order it if you're interested.
Okay.
And if you order it and write me a note, I'll send you an autographed book plate that you can put in it.
Okay.
So,
and last question, I did record this, and I think there is some strength in numbers, and there may be some strategic people that get a chance to listen to this conversation. I don't know, how does everybody feel about me identifying particular folks who I might share this video with?
It's fine with me. I don't mind at all.
Anybody have any angst about
Please
that?
Please share. That's the key. We just got to keep sharing everything we got. That's what all this social media is all for. Different platforms to just be able to share and catch eyes.
Okay. Kharen, you okay with that? Okay.
Yeah.
Then that's what's going to happen. Now, Alice, I know you're okay with that.
Yep.
All right. Okay, so I'm going to label it and put a thing up underneath it and cast it out into the ozones of those who I think might benefit, and we'll just see which way it goes. I will say that it will be at least probably realistically a month before we have the next conversation, continued community conversation of care. So I'll at that time I'll probably have some people who I'll invite that respond to what they heard on this call today, and I will keep you guys posted. It doesn't mean you have to join every time, but just so that you can be aware of the growth and everything. But my forte is visionary. It's not all that technical stuff sometimes, so that's why I need a circle of folks who help me be a better me. So I will be reaching out to some people as well that can help us take this into a more structured conversation going forward. This has been a production of Community Cultural Wealth in Action.